today we're buying the cheapest Legacy GT in Oregon. I don't know what's wrong with it. Supposedly it's overheated and it does not crank, but it's a great deal. I'll let you guys guess what I paid for it in the comments down below. We got the tow dolly hooked up here with the 2014 Grand Cherokee. It should do great. It's going to be a little bit of a drive. We're in Portland and we got to go out to Tigard. So this will be interesting. All right, she's all loaded up, ready to go. We got her purchased. Car looks great. I'm excited. And just like that, we're back home. Let's get it out and on the lift.
Okay, it looks like after charging the battery overnight, the battery came back to life. It was totally dead. Now state of health is 77%, state of charge 98. So we can go ahead and try to start it and see if it turns over.
First thing I want to say is, excuse my voice, I'm very sick, so I may sound a little different than I normally do. But to give you guys a little background on this car, I found this car on OfferUp a few months ago and finally pulled the trigger to go look at it and buy it. He wanted $2,000 for the car, and I ended up purchasing it for $1,100. He did say it was non-running, and he said it did not crank or start. Last night we got the battery charger on the battery. The battery was completely dead. Absolutely no energy left in the battery, no voltage. We charged it up overnight and we cranked it to turn it on and it started up. It does not run very well, but it does run. So that part I am happy about. We know it's not a rod bearing failure. More than likely, we're low on compression on one or two of the cylinders. When you crank the car, you can kind of hear it stuttering a little bit. It also feels like it's like misfiring when it is running, as you can see from the video clip. I think overall the car is a great deal. I'm excited to get started on it. I think the first thing I want to do on this car is get it cleaned up a little bit. I already went in the interior and vacuumed it just because I like to start with a clean slate. The only really interior flaw is that driver's seat there, and then the driver window switch is also broken. But aside from that, I mean, it's in great shape. It was a California car. It's 2 owners. It's got a clean Carfax and about 140,000 miles. To be honest, I think it's the cheapest Legacy GT in the US right now. First thing I'd like to do is a compression test just to see what our baseline is on this car. We kind of already know it might have a burnt valve or a bad head gasket. We did check the radiator here for coolant and there's absolutely no coolant. So that's not a good sign, but I think the first thing I want to do is my other car, my daily driver, is also a Legacy GT, as you've seen in other videos. This car has an NVIDIA quad tip Q300 exhaust on it. They run about $900. I think the first thing I want to do is yank off this exhaust and swap it onto my daily driver and see how it sounds. Here's what it looks like underneath here. We have the stock cat going up here, all the way up to the turbo. And if you come back to right here, this is where the good part starts with the NVIDIA. Much bigger pipe, much better quality than the factory. Nice fitment. Show you back here. Let's go to the back. Single goes into a dual muffler setup. Kind of dirty, but and then at the very end here, we have the best part, the quad tips. NVIDIA performance.
There we go, we just dropped it down. Here's a better look at it. Pretty good sized mufflers here on the rear.
the battery, so we have to charge it again. No big deal, but I'm gonna start diving into this car. First thing we have to do after we charge this battery is take the battery out with the battery hold down here, and then we got to pull out the intake here, and then we're gonna have access at that point to remove the spark plugs and the ignition coils. That way we can start with our compression test, and from there we'll have a much better idea of really what's going on with this car. Okay, we already got the battery bracket out. Now we're getting the terminals off and the battery out. It's pretty gross.
Okay, now we have both the battery and the intake out. And so the next step is to pull the coil packs. I believe that's a 12 mm down there. So we'll start removing that. All right, we're trying to get number 3 spark plug out right now. And this one's a little bit more difficult than what I've experienced in the past. It seems like the side of the motor is a little bit closer to this frame rail. So we're having to use this ratchet extension. So it allows you to turn it up at top, and then down at the bottom, it keeps spinning it.
So this is a contraption we had to use to get out this spark plug. We have the electric drive here hooked to this special type extension, socket extension. And you can see as I turn here, it turns down here. Not a lot of room to work between the engine and the frame rail, so you got to get real clever with your tools. All right, now that we got all the spark plugs and coil packs out, you're going to remove the fuse box cover here, and you're going to remove the 15 amp fuse for the fuel pump, because you don't want the fuel pump running when you do your compression test.
All right, and here's all the coil packs and plugs that are out, and you can see there are some differences. If you look at number 3, that one looks like it's probably burning the best. There's a little bit of white on the ceramic there, whereas you look at the others, number 4, extremely dark, and number 2, pretty dark too. This one actually smelled like gasoline when I pulled that out, and number 1 kind of in between. So if I'm guessing, I'm gonna think that the number 4 probably has the worst compression of them all, but we'll find out. All right, now that we got the compression tester in cylinder number 1, we're reinstalling the battery so we can crank it over. Okay, now we're ready to go ahead and turn the car over and check our compression. So go ahead, Jacob. Okay. All right, looks like on cylinder 1, we got a pressure of about 110. Okay, now we're on cylinder number 3, so go ahead and turn it over. Okay, it doesn't look like any compression, so I rechecked to make sure that the tube is in here good and secure, and it is. So go ahead and crank it once again. Okay. So it looks like 0 compression in cylinder number 3. Now we pulled the battery, put in the compression tester into cylinder number 2, got the battery back in, so we're ready to crank it over, and let's see what we get this time. Okay. All right, looks like about 97 there. Almost 100, but it's under 100, so not good. Right, now we got the compression tester into cylinder number 4, so let's go ahead and turn it over and see what we get. And let's see, 5, 10, looks like 115 here on cylinder number 4. Right, so here are the final results. Cylinder 1 had 110 psi, 2 at 97, 3 was 0. That's when I thought would actually be better because the plug looked a little better and it didn't look so fouled, but I was definitely wrong on that one. And then number 4, 115 psi.
Like we said earlier in the video, we checked the radiator. We didn't see any coolant in the overflow or the radiator itself. We're gonna see if we can drain some coolant down here and see if there's anything in here. To get access to the radiator to drain it, you're gonna wanna remove this plastic shield under here. All right, let's find out what the truth is. Let's get this plug out of here and see if we have any coolant. I see something.
You could just undo it by hand.
Yeah, we got a little bit.
All right, we just loosened one of the radiator caps, and actually there's quite a bit more coming out here.
Right, now that we got the coolant drained out, we're gonna work on clearing out the old oil out of here and see what kind of condition we're left with. This drain plug out, and here she goes.
Looks pretty dark. It doesn't look like milkshake though, at least not yet, so guess that's good.
This oil filter off. Should just unscrew here, and we'll have a bunch more oil.
And since we're pulling the motor, we're gonna put it back in once we get this oil out. That way it'll keep that cavity plugged while we pull the motor and minimize our mess. We might actually, at some point, want to just cut that filter up and see if we can find any debris in there. All right, we're just going to let this sit for a while, and while that's continuing to drain, we'll undo some other things on the underside of the motor here that we need to do to pull it. That's going to include these grounding straps. There's one on each side. There's the passenger, and then one over here on the driver's side. And we'll also unplug the fans, and we also need to get the downpipe off. And we'll also unplug the O2 sensors. There's two of them. There's one in the header, and then another one back here after the cap. Right there.
Alrighty, we just got the downpipe off the vehicle. We are in the process of draining a little bit more coolant. We got that lower radiator hose off, and also got the intercooler removed. I think the next step we have to do is get some bell housing bolts out of the transmission that connects the transmission and the engine together.
Okay, just to show you the bolts that we're going to do, we're just going to do the lower ones on the bell housing at this point. There's one right here behind the axle. So that one, and that's actually a stud. The two low ones are studs, so these two guys here, and then right up behind the axle, you got another bolt. Like right there. And the others you can get from the top. And a couple of the bell housing bolts are actually the starter, which is up there, so we'll pull those from the top as well.
All right, we're gonna get the starter out. I already got it unbolted and the electrical connectors disconnected. So we'll put that off to the side.
And we also left a couple of bell housing bolts in until we get the torque converter bolts off. So there's a little plug here.
And then to access your torque converter bolts, you're gonna pull out this rubber cover right here. And you'll be able to see them down in here. When you do the torque converter bolts, you're going to want to have some room here in the front of the engine. That way you can turn the engine. That way you have access to all the different torque converter bolts. So the more access we have up here, the better. I'm going to take off this hood bracket here, and then we're going to pull out the radiator fans as well. Let's get this fan out of here.
Okay, so now we got everything out of the way in the front. We can go ahead and crank this motor. And what we're looking for is the torque converter bolts right through this little window here. So go ahead and start cranking the motor. Just stop when we see the first bolt. There should be 4 bolts holding the torque converter on.
There's one.
Okay, there's one. Next up is to pull the motor mount bolts. There's just 2 14mm nuts, one here on each side. So I'll just use the impact and zip these off. All right, we just went ahead and we pulled the heater core tubes off, and so now we're going to pull the fuel lines next. There's 2 fuel lines. Okay, so at this point we have the motor out. We took the timing belt covers off just to look at the timing. And let's see, line up the timing marks here. So on the crank pulley, lines up with the little mark here on the oil pump. And if we go over here to the right side of the motor, this little thing should line up with that mark in the cover, and it does. These 2 pulleys, these double marks here should line up on the bottom. They almost do there, pretty close. And then of course one here on the side, that should line up with the little mark here, and it does. And then on the left side of the motor, the timing mark on the top matches up with that. And then we look down here and it's like, oh, okay, those don't line up. That looks like that's a whole tooth off. So maybe it skipped a tooth at some point. The other thing that I've noticed when trying to just turn this crank here to get things lined up, it takes a heck of a lot. I almost can't do it. There. It's very, very tough. So I believe that we're going to have some issues with the rod bearings as well. They're probably on the verge of spinning. So anyway, it'll be interesting when we get the motor apart, take a look at that. All right, so anyway, this video is getting a little long. So anyway, I think I'm gonna call this video part 1. We'll continue on part 2. We'll further tear it down and take a look at the internals. I'm sure we're gonna have some rod bearing issues. We know we have no compression in cylinder number 3 over here. So I think before we even start the tear down, I'll go ahead and do a leak down test just to see where the air is coming out, whether it's an burnt exhaust valve or maybe a ringland on the piston has been destroyed and it's coming all out through the crankcase. I don't know, but it'll be interesting, and we'll continue on that with the next video. So thanks for watching, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.